How are you today?
Great. How about you?
Not bad. Sun's shining and we're having some good warm weather for February, I know that. So, Joe and I are here for the Coles County tentative hearing. We basically have a statutory process that takes place for all 102 counties throughout the state of Illinois. Whenever the tentative multiplier is certified for a county, we hold a hearing just like this. So, my name is Jason Lamar. I'm the manager of the Equalization and Sales Ratio section at the Department of Revenue. Joe also works for the Equalization and Sales Ratio section. He's a revenue tax specialist, and he's actually the one that's the hearing officer for today. With that in mind, I'm going to read the opening statement for this particular hearing, and then we'll open it up for any questions that you might have from there. Does that sound okay? All right. So, this is a public hearing held pursuant to and in accordance with Section 17-20 of the Property Tax Code for the purpose of accepting statements or proofs as the department deems requisite from any interested party in support of or in opposition to the department's estimate of the percentage to be added to or deducted from the aggregate assessment and tentative equalization factor assigned to .9709 for Coles County for the year 2022. These statements or proofs shall be considered by the department to either confirm or revise its estimate to correctly represent the considered judgment of the department. Notice of the hearing appeared in the Mattoon Journal-Gazette, a newspaper of general circulation in Coles County, on 11/19/2022. This hearing is held by Joe Simcoe and Jason Lamar, who are designated in writing by the Director of the Department of Revenue to conduct such a hearing. A copy of that designation is entered into the record as the Department's Exhibit 1. It is noted that the estimated percentage to be added to the aggregate assessment of locally assessed property or other than the property assessed under sections 10-110 through 10-140 and 10-170 through 10-200 of the code certified to Coles is negative 2.91%. And that estimate was based on a tentative equalization factor of .9709. In accordance with the property tax code, the sales ratios for the 3 years immediately preceding the assessment year, as adjusted for any subsequent changes, are used in computing equalization factors. Therefore, the sales ratio data from 2019, 20, and 21, as adjusted for any 2022 reassessment changes, have been used to determine the 2022 equalization factors. The use of current sales ratio data will reflect recent changes in property values. Equalization factors are then calculated from ratios for non-farm sales. The worksheet, Form PTAB 210, for computing the tentative equalization factor is entered as Department's Exhibit Number 2. The worksheets for computing the average level of assessments are entered as the Department's Exhibit Number 3. The 2022 equalization factor is tentative and subject to change if Board of Review's action significantly changes assessment levels in the county. Although the equalization factor inevitably affects the tax base and the revenue-raising capabilities of local government units, such effects are not proper subject matter for statements of proofs at this hearing. The Department considers this hearing, as it has all others in the past, as an informational hearing. The Department is concerned more with the submission of information to aid in the equalization task than with the form that information is presented. The Department desires to encourage submission of information pertaining to equalization from any interested member of the public, and therefore does not impose upon such members the restrictions of evidentiary law. The hearing is now open for comments or statements from any interested party. So, I'd like to maybe go around the room orderly so that we have an orderly fashion of having everybody get a chance to ask any questions that you might have. So if you don't mind, I'd like to start over on the far wall with this gentleman in the orange sweater.
I'll pass.
Pass? Sir? Right here?
Well, my name's Charles Dutton. I'm a resident of Coles County. We have at the time right now, we have some legal actions involved in the county over assessments.
Okay.
So what I'd like to know is how if everything is in flux, we've had a lot of problems at how these things can actually be computed accurately. Have you any ideas on that?
Well, while we do not have any information about what lawsuits or legal action you have pending in your local jurisdiction, we can tell you that the common course of business when it comes to assessments and equalization factors that we certify, this happens annually for every county, and the certification of the tentative equalization factor is kind of an indicator to everyone in the community as far as how close your level of assessments is to the target of 33.33% for non-farm property. There was a lot of language that I read in that opening statement, but what it's basically saying is we look at the non-farm sales every year. We use that group of valid non-farm sales that occurs in each county. We wrap our arms around all that data and we compute a sales ratio study. That sales ratio study then goes to the county, and the county CCAO, the Supervisor of Assessments, looks at that sales ratio study. It's broken down by township in each county, and they'll determine what type of reassessment activity they need to pursue for that year. So what they're looking at with the sales ratio study is where are we off from the 33 1/3%? Because 33 1/3% is the target non-farm ratio here in Illinois. If they're off and they decide they need to do some reassessment work and work with the township assessors, that's what the sales ratio study will then give them, that information, what townships really need attention, what class of property, whether it's residential, commercial, industrial, something like that. So they're really studying the sales ratio study that we provide to determine how much work and where that work's going to be for their tentative abstract. The tentative abstract is submitted by the CCAO, but it shows all the work that was done in that jurisdiction in that assessment year by the township and the CCAO, the Supervisor of Assessments. The Board of Review then is charged with taking in any assessment appeals after the tentative abstract and the tentative multiplier have been certified, so that all the assessment appeals can kind of work through the Board of Review system at the local level. So we're not privy to what type of legal action is pending in Coles County. All we're doing is conducting this hearing today to certify the tentative multiplier so that that can roll to the Board of Review, assessment appeals can be handled locally in the county, and then ultimately our job then will be to certify the final multiplier after the Board of Review is done with all of their work. Does that help answer your question? I can't do anything about any legal action you might have going on in the
Well, I'm
county.
not talking about that so much, but when these figures are all wrong, how can anybody get accurate assessments and accurate tallies? That's what I'm saying.
Okay, so I think an indication here maybe I don't understand what your interpretation of wrong might be. And I think that might be subject to the outcome of your legal action locally.
No.
So that all has to kind of go through the system for you legally, and let the judge determine what validity there is to your argument as well.
Well, it's been going on for years, so
Has
it's
it?
not just now.
Okay.
If you can talk to somebody else, maybe they'll.
Sure, and I'll be glad to circle back to you if I don't cover your answer to your question with someone else over here, but I'm going to come to this gentleman right here.
Okay, back in 2016, our county went to a quadrennial assessment at that point in time, okay? Since that period of time, we're finding out that the quadrennial assessments have not been done properly,
Okay.
okay? We have a multi-township assessor who admitted recently that only 25% of that quadrennial assessment has actually happened each year since that period of time.
Okay.
So therefore, we don't feel like that what is happening in our county is even close to being accurate.
I get you. So, what I will say is that for the purposes of this particular public hearing, we're not up here to be judge and jury about what's happening locally with your township assessor or the county assessor. What we computed with the data that we had and the sales ratio study that was performed most recently for 2021 is that when the tentative abstract came in and the supervisor of assessment signed off on the tentative abstract, presented that to the Department of Revenue, the three-year average for 19, 20, and 21 was tallied at 34.33. Now the target there is at 33.33. So the purpose of what we're conducting the hearing for today is the department's estimate of the tentative multiplier right now is a 0.9709. Knowing that the assessments are a little on the high side right now, above the 33.33, what we're doing is we are confirming and certifying to the county as a whole that in order to correct that down to 33.33, we're going to apply a 0.9709 tentative multiplier. If the local board of review gets a whole bunch of assessment appeals on things that you're talking about and has enough information to decide that those assessments locally need to be brought down, the tentative multiplier may not be the outcome of the final multiplier. But we do have to certify the tentative multiplier because our indication right now is that as a whole, on average, you're sitting at a 34.33. So it's our job to say how close are they to 33.33. We're basically providing quality control and putting on a tentative multiplier of 0.9709.
Are you saying that you actually do have some control over the supervisor of assessments?
When it comes to the tentative multiplier, we're looking at what action and what activity and what work the township assessors and the county assessor have done so far and completed this year. That's what they give to us on this abstract. So basically an abstract's like balancing a checkbook. It's telling us, okay, they've got this assessed value in Coles County. The abstract breaks it down by township and then by class of property, residential, commercial, farm, everything like that is in the different classes of property within the townships. All we're saying is that when we tally up the work that was done compared to the sales ratio study, the 3-year average is running at 34.33, and to get it down where it needs to be at a 33.33, we've got to apply this tentative multiplier. If the Board of Review doesn't do enough work, or they don't have enough appeals, or they don't conduct enough reassessment work at the Board of Review level, and this stays, that means that this tentative multiplication factor of a 0.9709, it's going to reduce every one of the county's assessment on their upcoming bill by that negative 2.91%. So again, I think there's a lot of questions here. I think there's a lot of things going on locally. I wish I could help you with that. From our authority, we're looking at the certification of the tentative equalization factor. That data that we have is brought to us by the sales ratio study, and then we adjust it based on balance in the checkbook or the abstract that we have from the tentative abstract every year. So, if you've got those types of things going on locally, have you engaged locally with the state's attorney? I'm sorry, I'm just asking. I don't mean to make you guys laugh.
State's attorney, and unfortunately, they don't work for the people.
Okay.
I mean, unfortunately, they're not always up there with our interest in mind.
Okay.
I mean, we have our previous state's attorney lying to the public at a public board meeting, and we have him on video. And unfortunately, he's a judge now. But once Charlie's case gets resolved, that could bring some of that out also.
Now, are they kind of lined up in succession, or are they all wrapped up together as far as the legal action that's pending? Because I don't know, are you guys in the same legal pending suit, or do you have different suits?
Same county.
Where does they count?
Okay, but it's maybe a collection of suits that are going to go in front of the local judge, or?
No.
Okay.
Just his right there only right now.
So you're pretty much the one that has the legal action in the county?
Yeah.
Okay. And what did you bring that? What did you bring that to the court for?
There was an illegal hiring of the assessor.
Okay.
They hired a contractor to do the supervisor of assessments job.
And he didn't know what he was doing.
And
Wasn't qualified.
actually, it's against the state statutes, the state's right in there. If we have a qualified supervisor of assessments, we're paying them the salary, they legally can't bring in an outside contractor to do the job. But when I called up up here in 2017, spoke to somebody in the legal department, I was told that, no, it's not allowed, but it happens all the time. I said, does that make it right?
I understand.
And that's exactly where we're at
Okay,
in the state of Illinois.
okay.
It's happening, and it's being allowed to happen. And Charlie,
But there's another legal action.
I think that's gonna be interesting, the outcome of
Didn't
your
it-
case.
I
but-
think the Board of Review also hired that same contractor to assist the Board of Review.
yes,
Okay,
as
At
an
$100
agent.
an hour.
As an agent, he was acting as an agent after he did the reassessments to combat people whenever they were fighting in the state of Illinois.
And there's people that used to work right here in the Illinois Department of Revenue that are making money going around the counties, being hired to do the work of the supervisor assessments as independent contractors that are coming in there, and they're coming up with these numbers.
okay, I'm not aware of that.
I'm just telling you they are.
So,
And-
I'll give you a little hint. I started with the Department of Revenue January 16th of the year 2020. So you guys have, sounds like a lot more history than what I've got. So I appreciate that. I appreciate where you're coming from. Unfortunately, we've got to certify the tentative
Well, as it
multiplier
applies
today.
to the numbers, though, you said earlier, you're provided data by the county, you're coming up with this number. What I'm saying is, and what Rex, I think, was saying, correct me if I'm wrong, if we've got assessors that are not following the quad and not doing their whole quad during that year, and you're just getting certain segments of the quad being done,
Mhm.
okay? I'm talking about certain segments of one quad, not just
Right.
one quad, if you
Right.
understand what I'm saying. You're basing numbers off sales data and also other data from a section of a quad that might not be reflective or representative of the entire quad. And you're coming up with a number and we're getting penalized for it. And there's no recourse for us.
Mhm.
And so we're trying to tell you, I asked this question 7 years ago. And said, I want to know what certified means. When you tell me you're going to certify these numbers, I want to know what it means. I want to know what it means when you get numbers from our clerk, our county clerk, and they're certified. What exactly does certified mean, and what kind of weight does that carry?
For that, I would gladly get you an answer from our legal representative here at the Department of Revenue. I don't want to speak from a legal perspective because personally, I'm not a lawyer.
But you said you're going to certify the number that you give, the multiplier you put on us. So who certifies that number?
So that actually is a function by the Department of Revenue that we're charged with through our section and through our math that we provide here. When you're talking about what's going on locally and needing to affirm or assure that all of the local assessment work is being completed and conducted in a manner that's in accordance with the state statute, I do think that that's going to be necessary to start that at the local level, and it sounds like it's already starting.
What I'm saying is you may not have the whole picture, but yet you're taking what they're giving you and you're coming back at us with a multiplier. And what I'm saying is that we're getting hit by 3 rounds here. The township assessor's not doing their job, the supervisor assessor's not doing their job, and then you come and tell us based on the data they're giving you, which is incomplete and inaccurate, and then we're getting a multiplier.
Right. So your multiplier this year is negative. If that's any solace, it's a negative multiplier.
We
So
were
what
told
it
that in
means-
this meeting, that it was a negative, but she
Still-
also told us to be ready because according to the sales, that's going to go up dramatically.
And I am seeing that now. The way a sales ratio study works, and just to kind of give you a small nutshell of how all that works, is I think everybody in this room has bought and sold property in the state of Illinois. When you go to the closing table, there's always a ton of forms that you have to sign. One of those forms is a P-Tax 203. It's called a real estate transfer declaration. That basically, the whole front side of it is a whole bunch of detail about the sales transaction. Is it residential? Has it been advertised for sale? What's the sale price? On the back, it's the seller and the buyer. Each of them sign off on that. When that information is done at the closing table, it then goes to the county supervisor of assessments. There's a part on the bottom of the back page where they have to put in the assessment from last year's final assessment is what they have to put on there. But the assessment information on the back of that 203 form compared to the sale price is how we come up with whether or not you're at that 33 to 3rd percent or not. So we're doing a grouping of sales. We're doing a grouping of sales for the entire county. It is broke down and it's stratified by township and then by improved properties and vacant properties. But at the same time, we're not basing all of this on specifically, when you say a portion of the quad that's being done. Last year's assessment compared to this year's sale price is what creates a sales ratio. So our sales ratio study is conducted every year. And on the 3 years that's in the sales ratio study, for instance, for this particular multiplier that we're looking at, you've got 2019, 20, and 21 on there. And that's the 3-year where we come up with a 3-year average. So every time a new year comes around, I'm starting to do the 2022 sales ratio studies for some counties right now. 19 will fall off when we do a new study, 22 will come on, we move these 2 columns over, we'll have a new 3-year average. What you're saying about that, as far as the anticipation of the upcoming sales ratio study, you know, the market's been crazy the last couple of years. It's best if the local assessment authorities would keep up with that, but if they don't keep up with that and they fall behind, and you actually come out with
Our highest numbers would fall off.
Yep.
Too.
and you come out with a ratio below 33.33, on average, then that's telling us that the assessments aren't keeping up with what the sales market is doing. So the way the math flows through our section is, when we do the sales ratio study and we look at that 3-year average, we're going to tell the local assessment authorities, the supervisor of assessments and the township assessor, hey, here's your new sales ratio study, here's what your numbers are looking at like. It's very fluid, and it does fluctuate from year to year, but it all depends on what the sales market's doing in your local area. That being said, the fact that you're running a little high right now is the reason we're putting that negative multiplier on there. So the negative multiplier applied to everybody's assessment within that county is going to bring your assessment down on your upcoming bill.
That changes when it goes to the board of review. That number's
It
gonna change.
has the potential
has to
to,
change. It
because
has to
if they conduct business and they conduct enough business that it will change the outcome of that 3-year average, then that's when the tentative multiplier will change for the final multiplier.
But by law, they have to do the whole quad. That's your own rules, that's Illinois
And that's-
Department. So if they're not doing the quad, and they want to come into a quad and say, we're going to slap a local multiplier on this, because we don't feel this is up to par, and then the rest of that quad's not getting touched, how's that fair?
Well, this year, based on the 3-year averages for the data that's available, you're looking at negative multipliers across. If they have to do anything, they got to bring the numbers down this year. I'll tell you that at board review.
Well, that's not what's happening.
Well, if they go up, they're going to get farther away from 33.33.
That's what
And
I
if
was
they
getting at.
do that,
How can they do that? I mean,
I'm just letting you know, if they do that, then your your final multiplier is going to be more of a negative than your tentative
But
multiplier.
according to your data there, you think we're up. You're saying we're up.
The 3-year average is sitting at a 34.33. The target is a 33.33. So if
So
you do
we're
the
over
math,
assessed.
if you do the math, you're a little on the high side. You're a little overassessed. What that means is that the application of this multiplier, this 0.9709, since it's less than a 1.0, that means it's a negative multiplier, and it's going to bring those assessment levels down this year. So the board of review, when looking at this, if they're looking at this mathematically, they should be looking at the evidence that comes to them and understanding that the ratios from the 3-year average is telling them that the county is floating on the high side of 33.33. So they need to be bringing assessments down at the board of review.
I don't mean to hog the time, but I want to be clear before you move on to something else. If it's showing we're overassessed, and we know for a fact that our quads are not being totally assessed during their quad years, then that means a disproportionate amount of the burden is being carried by people who were assessed or who are getting local multipliers. That's what's happening. And I'm telling you right now, a lot of the numbers that flow through here, they can't be right.
I don't know how you can say they're certified.
That's why I
Who's
asked
certified?
about certification.
Yeah, that's, I mean, the department certifies it in by nature. I mean, the math is done
Your department?
in our
Who
department.
in the department?
What about the figures that they're sending you? How do you know that they're certified?
In terms of what we get for the sales ratio study,
Yes.
that again goes back to every non-farm sale that happens in the county is required to fill out that 203 form.
Let's talk about that green sheet.
Yes.
Back in the first situation of the quad,
Mhm.
there were businesses that were sold. green sheet was filled out, and one of them was a Kentucky Fried Chicken. They bought goodwill, they bought land, they bought building, they bought inventory. It all shows up on your green sheet, nothing picked out to what the building and land's for, the whole enchilada. Now, if that happens, if that's going on, then your green sheet, when it's turned in, is wrong.
I agree with you.
Can't be so.
And that's
in
where
that-
some of these numbers are coming from, because they're not being done proper
And they're
from,
being certified.
and you're certified.
One thing that you have to remember is that there are legal
No, there's no legal.
penalties.
We already been there with state's attorney. There's no
no-
legal.
You
Forget that.
guys have no teeth.
There's legal penalties for the preparer of the P-Tax 203. It clearly states on the back of a P-Tax 203, and there's different misdemeanors and blah, 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 but I can't.
Okay.
All I'm saying is, it's the responsibility of the preparer to fill that information out correctly. And in a commercial sale like that, yes, they should have a full consideration, but then deduct any personal property, goodwill, inventory,
But
those
you
types
call,
of things.
if you put it all in and file it, I'm guaranteeing your numbers are wrong.
I-
Would you agree with that?
I thank you for that, but we rely on that data as it's presented to us.
But if it's
gotta
wrong,
be-
it's wrong,
It
correct?
is, yep, if it's wrong, it's wrong. From the preparer's standpoint, the preparer should be filling out the P-Tax 203 form correctly. From the county standpoint, if the county, it comes through the county, there's an opportunity for the assessor to tell us that the personal property list that should be deducted off of the full consideration, there's a way for them to tell us that that's inaccurate, so they can code on the back of the form, tell us a code. We know that there's mistakes that happen, and on average, we've got very reliable data throughout the state when it comes to a P-Tax 203 form.
Another thing I want to share with you.
Mhm.
This last tax cycle, a gentleman sold 3 properties for $250,000 apiece. And when it got to the supervisor's assessments, she recorded one sale for $750,000. Will that mess your numbers up?
I'd have to look at the
That's
specifics.
in your
I-
ratio.
I-
That's-
Well,
I'd have to-
no, it's already there.
It's already in there.
And if,
If that
understand,
happens, is that wrong?
the front of the P-Tax 203 form has a place for them to list how many parcels are sold and what those parcel PIN numbers are, the parcel identification number. So if those are accounted for on the front, and the assessor then accumulates the 3 assessment values that equate to that $750,000 sale, you can have more than one parcel on a
Well, I
transaction
get
or a
that, but
deed.
that's ambiguous, because it wasn't one sale for $750, it was 3 sales for $250.
I
That's
gotcha.
the difference.
I got you. But was it the same buyer and seller?
Yes,
So why can't it be on one deed and one form?
I don't know, I'm just telling you how
Why
it was
can't it
recorded.
be on one deed and one form? If the form allows for it and the real
It might
estate
have been
transfer law,
interval times when they purchased
I-
them as well.
I appreciate that, but you're wanting to claim something's wrong or false when I'm
Well-
saying if the both pieces of the puzzle equate to those 3 properties,
What I-
we've got all the data we need to compare.
What I'm really most upset about is oversight. Where's the oversight? And if the state's attorney's not able to give us any type of help, where's the oversight?
He told me the AG, well,
Well,
I can tell you
and-
personally, the AG does not help
Okay.
local.
I think, and your name again, Charlie?
Charlie.
Okay. One thing I can tell you guys, and believe me, I was a county assessor for 19 years before I got this job. I worked with people just like you who were upset and didn't believe that the local assessment of property was being conducted in the right way. I've had these discussions at the county level. I mean, we need to certify our multiplier for our statutory purposes. I'll be glad to have the conversations with you here because I definitely hear where you're coming from. And I think Charlie's got the right idea by starting the process legally, and that's how it has to flow through the legal system. Thankfully, we're in a state that allows these types of legal challenges to be brought to the court's attention. Thankfully, we're also in a situation with property taxes. Let's be honest, property tax is still one of the very few taxes that you can appeal. So at the local level, these appeals need to be continually brought in front of your state's attorney, your board of review, your county board, okay? And I'm not putting it back on you guys, but all I'm saying is when we've got what we've got, we're not down at that level of township authority to where we're saying, you know, we don't have a thumb on an elected official that says, you're not doing your job. If you see that they're not doing their job in your county, then you're going through the right process, and I think Charlie's actually doing the right thing by bringing that legal action in front of the courts.
There's too many layers of government. By the time it gets to you, it's been to the township, the county, then it goes to you and goes through this process. This is all nothing but a big scam. It's a scam.
For us, it's math.
If you have the right numbers.
And I
2
agree.
plus 2 is 4 in my book, in a
Correct.
base of 10.
Correct.
So I know a little bit about math.
Correct.
So you're
So
gonna
the same thing is at a 34.33, if I need to get you down to a 33.33, I'm going to put a 0.9709 factor on. And from our math, that's what we're looking at. If we've got this level of concern, and if we've got this level, you know, I'd honestly like to see how your particular case works itself through and how that works locally.
I think there was 568 or 9 complaints this year in Coles County.
Normally there's
Okay.
like 60 or 70.
Wow. The problem being is that, you know, 22,000 parcels, I think, and we've only got 560. So you've got 99% of the people that truthfully don't understand the tax system, don't have the ability to actually get up and represent themselves or actually argue for an appeal. Now, at the local level, they're saying that if your name's not on the deed, you can't even argue for another person. You've got to have an attorney to do that. They're trying, I mean, the system's got people, you know, to where they can't even fight for themselves. Some of the language needs to be changed up here through the Department of Revenue, to where if you've got somebody that's knowledgeable to actually argue their case, they should be allowed to do so.
I'm not an attorney, I don't know how the courts would even view that. I mean, if I came in to argue on your behalf in front of a sitting judge,
Yes.
he'd probably tell me to go sit down. I'm no attorney, you're no attorney,
Right.
if I know you well enough by now. I would say that there are reasons legally and statutorily that local jurisdictions have that limitation and have that restriction. It's not because they're trying to make it more difficult, it's because as it goes through the process and it gets higher into the courts aren't going to acknowledge anything happened at a lower level if it wasn't done by a legal representative in legal fashion. So,
But you guys have a rule book. You got a pamphlet you put out.
so should your local board of review.
Okay.
Yeah.
They don't go
They're
by
not
it.
following it.
They're not following, but in your book, I think it's page 15 or 16, if I remember correctly, off the top of my head, it talks about assessments being unequal. And it talks about if one district is assessed or reassessed, and another one's not, and they share the same services, like fire service, school district, whatever, and one district is reassessed, the other's not, and this district's paying more in assessed value, that's a 14th Amendment violation. You got unequal. That's exactly what they did in Coles County. They split into quads in 2016, and what they did is instead of doing the whole county and bringing the whole county up, they went to one quad, which was the biggest populous area in the county, and they reassessed that quad only, and then the next year they reassessed the second most populous part of the county, which was the second quad, in the third and fourth. That's how they did it. Well, this quad, the first one they did, shared school districts with other parts of the quads that weren't getting reassessed. So you literally had one part of the quad being reassessed and paying a high percentage of the tax burden, which took 4 years to get to the final quad that shared the same school district. We brought it up to them, and they're like, oh no, we have the right to divide into quads. We never said you didn't have the right to divide into quads. But what they did was they penalized and took this quad and said, you guys are going to pay more. One more year of a higher percentage of taxes than this quad here, than this quad here, and this quad here. Now we got township assessors within the quads that say, well, I was only supposed to reassess 1/4 of my quad. No, you're supposed to have the whole quad reassessed. And so this thing just goes on and on. This isn't our first time around the block. We've been here before. And really, I don't appreciate coming in the front door and being treated like I'm some criminal in the Department of Corrections. I mean, that we have no business being here. We can't videotape. This is a public meeting. We asked the front row, what public meeting? Like you actually had a public meeting? sometimes I think you guys publish these, my opinion only, because of the last time, we've got a little history here now. We came here, we were escorted to the front door by security and told to get out the first time we came here. You're advertising a public meeting, and then you're giving the press garbage about not being able to come in here? What kind of racket is this? If this is our only recourse, we can't come to a public meeting without, I mean, this is not right.
I'm glad you're here today,
We're paying the bills.
and I'm glad that Joe and I are here today.
Well, I don't know how glad you are that I'm here.
No,
Because most people aren't glad.
I really am, and you're right. You know, that's the whole function of this. Unfortunately, our limitation on today's public hearing is not like an airing of grievances that need to happen at the local level. They are statutory process, just like you said, when you recognize the fact that you had some parts of the county paying more than other parts of the county, that's what this equalization process is for. Only we're looking at it county by county. We're not looking within the county.
Right, but we
We're
brought
looking
it
at
to
it
you
county
guys.
by county.
We brought it to you guys last time, and that's why my question was, who certifies these things? And when I said, it says in your rule book that if you divide into quads, you can't have unequalized, okay, assessments. And that's what happened, and they looked at me like deer in a headlight. What are you gonna do about it? It's your rule book. You guys are real good about applying a multiplier to our county when you look at those numbers, but what are you gonna do when the county's not being done?
A negative multiplier this year, I just want to reiterate.
Until the board review. And let's
I mentioned
qualify
that in
that.
2018, they looked at me like, what?
Qualify that. Am I right on
Serious.
that? Until the board review. Come on, that's kind of a
The
little.
tentative, as
That's
it is prior to the
disingenuous.
border review action.
But that's tentative.
Yeah.
Tentative
This is the
doesn't mean
tentative.
anything.
And we don't have the final abstract yet, so we don't know what the numbers will be on
I
the
have a
final
question.
abstract.
So if we're coming in here and telling you what's going on in our counties, and we're showing you and can show you evidence that that's what's going on, and you know, both of you know what we say to be true, and we can back it up, are you still gonna accept what she sends?
We, at this juncture,
Yes or no? Is that, no matter if it's right or wrong, are you gonna accept it?
we are going to accept the information that we have before us today, and that's the statutory limitation of this hearing. That's all I can tell you, based on the language that I can
Yes.
provide you,
So you're gonna
we're going to
accept
accept
wrong
it.
numbers?
Because we do have to certify the tentative multiplier based on the information that we do have.
And if you didn't accept it, what would happen?
Without a multiplier,
I'm just saying, if you put things on hold. and didn't accept it.
statutorily, locally, who's your biggest taxing district locally?
School system.
Okay? Who's your second biggest?
In our county?
Probably our cities.
I was gonna say,
Probably the counties themselves, or the townships.
So without a statutorily certified tentative multiplier, your taxing districts within the county do not get funds. Okay? You can't send out tax bills, and therefore those taxing districts cannot operate without operating revenue.
They got plenty of reserves.
That would be a great thing.
I think understand, that's very subjective, whether they've got plenty or not.
But what's the recourse for us? You're gonna go ahead and give them a tentative multiplier. If we brought you proof that what was going on, as Rob detailed, is going on, then what's the recourse for us to stop having that tentative multiplier and an eventual multiplier put on? Tell me what the process is. What is the Illinois Department of Revenue's process for dealing with that?
So what we will do is we will gather, I mean, if you've brought evidence with you that you'd like us to see and consider, we'd like to accept that into the record. If it's an overwhelming amount of evidence that can actually sway the outcome of this, we will take it into account. As he just said, you got how many appeals at your local board review?
I believe it was 569.
500 and some, and you've got how many parcels in the county?
22,000.
So I understand that you've got concerns, and I understand that you see part of the county being reassessed maybe a little more aggressively than another
It's
part
not
of the
aggressive.
county.
Some's being reassessed and others are not being
Okay.
assessed.
Yeah.
I wanna be very clear.
In the
It's not
same
more aggressive.
neighborhood as these guys right here, when they get reassessed, plus originally had an 11% multiplier put on their property also,
Reassessment.
and maybe the house next door doesn't get reassessed. They're just getting 11%. So there's a lot of inequalities happening from a 4.2% multiplier on some areas up to an 11%.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, it's all over the board. I mean, we have
So
here's an individual.
do you all live in the same township or the same general
Same
vicinity? Or
Same county.
just all from the county? Okay. So one thing I will tell you is Your township assessors, they're elected officials.
Oh, we already know.
We already know that, and you're gonna tell us that they just don't elect them, that doesn't hold any water, because
How
if
come?
they're not, because how long are they elected for?
4 years.
Okay, how long's a quad? 1 year for every 4. So they can technically do no work for 4 years and give you garbage numbers and we pay for it.
Mhm. And what are you gonna do the next time that the election comes around? It's no different than Congress, guys. You've
Nobody
got
runs 'cause
you've
you
got
have
the
to have-
elective authority.
You have to have the paperwork to be able to be what they do.
If you guys are all here and you spend this amount of time coming to Springfield for this type of passion, this type of,
Not passion, it's anger.
Listen, we
Anger.
brought this to our county boards and everywhere else, you're not the
What-
only one.
what would prevent you from taking the classes and becoming a certified assessor?
That's
You
what I
know
was
what,
getting ready to
Illinois
say.
pushed me out the door.
I know what it'd
don't
be,
wanna
you'd be
here.
walking into a mess, that's the problem.
And you would be,
But
and
you
you
can
would be.
fix it.
But I can tell you from experience, it takes people to be involved to get this process changed. And if you're looking at the local level with elected township assessors, my advice for you is to get involved, become certified yourself as a certified assessor, put your name on the ballot and change things locally.
So,
These
okay.
are the guys, you guys, go ahead.
Yeah, right back here, orange shirt, you've been quiet and you've been soaking it all in.
Soaking it all in. They said a lot. I'm just here to basically increase my knowledge of this whole process, to protect the young people that are working.
Sure.
Husband, wife, 2 jobs, raising kids. They don't even look at their tax bill. And the elderly that have lost their husband, their spouse, that they don't even know who to turn to.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm here for.
Yeah. You know what, and I think if we all take our hats off and you just look at it from general citizenry, I think that's a good thing, that you're here, you're involved, you're increasing your knowledge, and you're trying to become part of the solution, you know, and if I'm hearing you correctly, that's what it takes, you know. I appreciate what you guys are saying. I will gladly accept everything that you have into the public record, which is what we're charged to do. We will take a look at it, hopefully.
These are just a few samples.
Sure,
Okay.
and I appreciate that. Whenever you're going to bring this to our attention, kind of using a broad brush, that's the same thing we're gonna do. We're gonna look at your information with a broad brush, whether it affects the outcome of this tentative multiplier right now for this year or not is yet to be determined, but at the same time, that's what Joe and I are here for. You know, this public hearing is for people like you. Sir?
Does the Department of Revenue have the power to conduct an audit if things are not correct, or if things come back not right? Does the Department of Revenue have the right to go in and audit what we're telling you?
Yes.
Then we're requesting one, and I'm requesting one on behalf of my
I
county.
appreciate that, and that's always one thing that we get asked. There are multiple variables, there are multiple facets and multiple perspectives that we will use in conjunction to determine if that's necessary. Guys, you guys are sitting at a 34.33%. If you were sitting at a 26 or a 42, and you were having comparative years that were just succession by succession with 11% multipliers, we would probably have more of an indication that that's necessary. But the individual finite problems that you're talking about are local issues that need to be handled locally. It's not a Department of Revenue issue when you're sitting at a 34.33.
Okay, I'll ask, Warren, what was your taxes before and after she got done the first time with you? How much did they go up?
My 21 tax bill that I paid last June and September, my assessed value was at $95,000 after my exemptions, which meant my house was close to $300,000 home. So this year, I get out the new mailer, and lo and behold, it's $481,000. Same house, no improvements. So where did this come from? Well, part of that was the 11% multiplier she put on it. So here I go over to the courthouse with questions. Well, everybody's getting that. I said, how can you charge everyone in the township when you didn't assess them, but you assessed me plus an 11%, so they dropped to 11%. Okay, that dropped somewhat, but still, I have had to fight every line item that's on my property card to try to get something resolved. I mean,
And right now, when you say get something resolved, is your estimated fair cash value close to what you think the market value would be?
well, if I can get $481,000, I'll sell it to you today.
I appreciate that. All I'm saying
Don't
is,
be a resident of Coles County.
And you can even use it as your sales ratio study.
let's see, what'd my wife give me for lunch money here? No, all in all, that's
But I mean,
something that's
I'm
common.
retired, living on a minimal retirement and Social Security, and what little bit of savings I've got, I'm gonna be giving to the tax.
Well, my first indication there is that if what you're, I have no reason to doubt what you're telling me. If what you're saying is accurate, my first response, sir, I'd get an appraisal. I would just get an appraisal.
We're spending money again.
Again,
Goes another
again.
$500.
But that's part of the process, and I would say the best evidence in a situation like that would be just to nail it down with an appraisal, pay for an appraisal. If nothing else, okay, I tell people this all the time. Don't look at getting an appraisal as fighting your taxes. Look at getting a snapshot of your value. Look at it as what are my assets worth? Put that in your bank box. Another use is actually using it for the appeal of your assessment. Put that in your bank box. Goodness, if something would happen to you or something would happen to your wife, you'd always have that snapshot of value in time for your kids to look at, and they'd have something to refer to say, you know, in 2023, here's what the house was
Well,
worth.
I'm glad you brought that up, because 2 years after I built the home, I applied for a refinance loan because it was a lot cheaper rate,
Mhm.
and of course the bank said, do you have an appraisal? I said, nope, but I'll get you one. So I got an appraisal. And I took this appraisal to her to show her how many square footages they had wrong on my property card.
Did they fix it?
Now, after 4 meetings,
Wow, okay.
I mean, I don't have time to run to the courthouse every time that I find a line item that's
Yeah.
totally messed up. I mean, that's ridiculous.
I know, I agree with you.
You guys,
You
you've
should
had
over
to
there.
know, you've had to know, this has been going on with us for 8 years. You've had to, I'm sure you have heard, you're being honest about Coles County, be honest with me, you've heard about it.
We get
We are the
feedback.
guys you've heard
But like
about
he says,
because,
you're not too, I mean, 34.
no, but this has been going on, you know.
We've had
some-
so much.
But I'm not just talking about the set, you know there's been accusations going down that county for a long time. So what I'm saying is this has been going on a long time. I want an audit of the county. You say you take the accounts, what do we have to do to get our county audited? Because this has got to stop. I'm not going to keep coming down here playing these games, because this is a game. It's passed on to the local level. Oh, it's the township assessor. No, it's the supervisor assessment. This is just, who wants to handle a hot potato today?
So again, I'm just going to reiterate one more time. The purpose of this public hearing is to actually sort of.
Again, I'm asking you a question outside. You said you could do an audit. What
That
do we
being the
need to do?
case, we will definitely take that, and I will discuss that with my manager, and she will discuss it with the higher levels.
Can I
of the
have a
Department of
name
Revenue.
or a document showing what the process is so I can make sure I follow up on it?
You know
Can
what,
provide that to me?
I would definitely provide that to you. Let me get your email so we have contact information. Email, phone number, if you've got that,
That's fine.
you can share with me. I'll definitely research that and get back to you. Statutorily, I don't have the authority to demand that there's an audit.
But somebody in this building does.
We would definitely have that discussion, and I will definitely get you that feedback and get you what's been determined. How about that? That's all I can
Well,
promise you.
can
I
you
can't
get me,
make you a
can you
promise.
get me some names of people I can talk to? I just don't, because I know what's gonna happen. I'm gonna get an email in a month saying it's been determined that there's not enough evidence for, to do this. We just been down this, no offense, I'm not
Sure.
trying to be
No.
offensive, but this
No.
is how it works with us. I wanna know, I wanna have a name accountable where, why wasn't it done? What's your rationale? Here's the evidence we can provide you. Why isn't it being done?
Okay.
Because
Okay.
everyone's scared.
Let me get that from you. Let me get that research performed here, and let me get you that answer.
What about the information that you
I'm
said
gonna get
as
you,
far
sir.
as
I see
the,
you back there. I'm gonna get to you.
what about the information that you received as far as the townships and how much each township is down? Is that something that we can get a copy of by chance today or not?
All of the information generated locally for property assessments is public information. And all of the information that we develop for all of this is presented into this public hearing, and everything that we have is public information. So I'm not going to withhold from you anything that we would have, because it's all public information. That being the case, let me get your information, and you know, if you'd like a copy of the adjustment forms that we provide and the way that it shows what townships have been, you know, up or down by a certain percentage.
Yeah.
I mean, all of that is public information, and so that's something that, you know, if I get that information from you, I'll be glad to provide you with all the public information that we have contained within the file for this hearing. That's no problem. I'll be glad to provide you with that.
Great, thank you.
Sir, Charlie?
Say again, what would cause you to audit a county?
Yeah, so we've had some counties through the indication of the sales ratio study process and the equalization process. You know, if the target is 33.33%, yeah, we've had some counties in the 42% range. That's way off the mark.
And if
And
they're low,
there's-
you would audit them too?
There's an indication that we would need to go in and either conduct an audit or require them to have a full reassessment performed in that county. So audits are within our purview, as well
This
as
department.
requiring the county to conduct a full reassessment within those jurisdictions. All I'm saying to you
You
is,
could, wait a minute, will you repeat that? What'd you just say?
Say that
Last
again.
part.
in my understanding, there's two things that can happen. We can perform an audit, okay, or we can require that county to perform a complete reassessment
Of the entire county?
of the entire
And
county.
and who would
And how
do
is
that
that done?
reassessment? They can't even do a quad, a full quad. How are you gonna do the whole county?
Based on the information that comes to us through the sales ratio study, if we have indication that it's required due to the inequity that's before us, we can request the county do an entire audit. We work with the county board locally on that, the state's attorney. It all has to go through the legal process. I can't skip this guy again. The guy in the back, you've been very good and gracious. Thank you for hanging in with me.
No problem. My name is Kirk Allen, and I've got a couple of questions, and I want to get back to the audit issue. What exactly is the county supervisor of assessment providing you? Is it strictly the sales ratio information on the P-tax form?
So every P-tax form that comes through as a non-farm sale for each county,
Right?
the assessment information has to be put on the back.
Okay?
So if you sold your house, what your house is assessed at would go in on the back. What it's sold for is on the front. And we compare the assessed value to the sold price
Right.
to decide, on average, when we look at that whole data set every year, how close the assessments are to 33.33%.
So you guys aren't receiving, say, some type of a database of, here's all of our assessments that we did. You're just getting the P-tax forms, and that's how you come up with your numbers.
That's how the sales ratio study is
Right.
performed. However, it's the abstract that I was telling you about
That's
The
abstract, that's
abstract
what I'm looking at.
is what breaks it down by township locally,
Okay.
and then by class of property within that township. So we do residential, you know, farmland.
So within that abstract, it should recognize, or that's an indicator that they've done their assessments in that, whatever that quad or district is, correct? Okay, if there's evidence that, and I haven't seen the abstract, so I don't know, but and this is hypothetical, and I apologize, that if the abstract says one thing, but the evidence says the abstract's a fraud, then what can you do anything?
That's a great question. From the standpoint of individual assessments,
Uh-huh,
that's what your local board of review is for.
okay, that's where,
However, when we get this, it's signed off on by your local assessment
as being
authority.
true and accurate.
Your CCAO, your supervisor of
And
assessments.
the county
Okay.
clerk, correct? Is it the county clerk?
County clerk signs the final abstract.
And so
Yeah,
that's
after
the
the board
certified,
review.
that would be the certification on the clerk's office, right?
Well,
Or was it
Right.
when that
That's where I'm going.
SOA?
the supervisor of assessments certifies at the bottom with her signature
Yes.
that this is true and accurate, you know, and it's,
They sign every page.
yeah, they sign
So
every page for every
she
township.
certifies the local one, I'm just trying to understand the process. But doesn't the clerk pay, is it the EAV and all that, does she have to certify that?
That would be the final abstract, a different form,
So-
but it's after border review
So,
actually.
so pre-border review, it's the supervisor assessment,
You got it.
post-border review, it's the clerk.
You got it.
But it has to flow through the supervisor assessment's office, I'm assuming.
Well, once the local supervisor assessment signs off on the tentative abstract, they're saying we're done with the numbers for this year.
Right.
They're giving the numbers to the board of review.
Right.
The board of review is charged with settling out all the appeals and the assessment complaints. And then after all that's settled, it's actually the county clerk then, after the board of review, that signs the final
And
abstract.
that's the certified final, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and then that comes to you guys. So the reason I'm only asking is because this idea of certification, I never got an answer last time I was here. So once that clerk signs it, that's as far as you guys are concerned, the county has certified those numbers. Then it comes to you, then who's responsible for certifying once you're done with the process?
We look at this as a whole. I don't know what your assessment is.
No,
And I don't
I
know
get
on
that.
these sheets if an individual assessment, the Department of Revenue is not charged with understanding if an
No, that's not
individual
my
assessment
question.
is right or
No,
wrong.
I get you. My question is before you apply a multiplier, whatever that is, negative, positive, okay, who certifies that? Because that has to be certified, right? Who signs off on that saying, okay, this is what it's gonna be, there's my signature, certified, bam, we get the
Would
multiplier.
that be Joe, or is that
Who
somebody
is that?
higher up?
Who is that?
It's basically director,
It really, the letter's a form letter that comes from the director. Our division manager is also on there. So, I mean, there's multiple people that sign off on it and provide that level of certification. And the certification is saying, we, as hearing officers for the Department of Revenue, the certification is telling you that we complied with statute by having this public hearing. We accepted information into the record that may or may not, change the outcome, but we'll gladly accept it. And that we had this public hearing by statute to provide this venue to determine if the information provided for the multiplier is going to be true and accurate. That being the case, again,
But then it goes to someone and they have to certify it to get the multiplier.
yeah.
So
the-
who is that?
That goes through up through our division manager and through the director's office.
So it's the director who ultimately signs off on it and the division manager is under him. Those two are the two. So just to be clear, it's the division manager and the director that certify that final piece.
And you got to remember, all of this that we do, the outcome of this is then published in a local newspaper to provide that level of transparency of what we conducted here today. The final certification, when it comes through, that's public information. There's a publication notice that happens for the certification of the final multiplier. That's published in a local paper. So everything the Department of Revenue does for the local county is all published in a local newspaper for public awareness. Sir?
Back to the audit and the countywide assessment. We're going to provide you with some evidence, a link to a video that's 2 hours long of a border review hearing. Multiple, people were in there in that hearing. These folks have been, and my name's Kirk Allen, I'm a local government accountability organization, but I think the goal is a solution to the problem.
Correct.
What these folks have identified came out in that meeting that you, Rob, and Rex were in, an admission by the Board of Review that number one, the assessors of the township aren't doing their job. Number two, the supervisor of assessment knows it's all wrong, and the only way to fix it, remember what she said and what the Board of Review said, the only way to fix it is a countywide reassessment, and that was our recommendation. And they said, well, we can't do that. Well, actually, they can if the Department of Revenue can work with this evidence, which it's sound, these folks know what is being done is wrong, and they know it needs a countywide assessment. Because when they went to the quad, they claimed they hadn't done any assessments for 16 years. So we're continually
For
chasing.
industrial, commercial.
Yeah, they did industrial commercial, and that was it.
No, they didn't do industrial commercial.
That's right.
They did
You know,
residential.
my whole point with the video, it confirms from the officials, the solution to their problem is a countywide assessment. It really is.
But they won't do it.
They
They
don't
claim
want
they
to
don't
pay
have money,
us
but they
$1
got
million.
10 million in ARPA money.
How can these folks, what would be the process to help get you guys involved to go towards a countywide reassessment? What can they do? What evidence do you need to strengthen that argument to make that happen? Because that's truly the solution, and they've admitted to it in a public meeting.
And if it's just, before you answer that, if it's just those 3 years showing
They got the money
outliers
to
and
do
not,
it
you know,
because they got
below,
ARPA money.
that's not gonna do it for us.
We've been fighting this since 2017. I mean, we truthfully have.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest with you, when they did my building in 2016, and I went before the board of review, they actually found in my favor.
Okay.
But you know what? I didn't stop doing what I was doing then because I knew of the other 99% of the people out there that were going to get screwed. So we've kept fighting for the people that can't talk for themselves.
And Rex, the supervisor of assessment in her own property card
Yeah, I've got that in here also.
it's like, wait a minute, how can you get popped for the same exact information, but she's not?
Doesn't even exist.
Something stinks in Denmark down in Coast County.
And that's why we need the outside agency.
The most depressing thing that I come away with this meeting is that no matter what she sends you, you're doing this.
I disagree with you.
Well,
Well, the
My
thing
point
is,
is
those
where we've
assessments
been.
you talked about on that P form, whatever it was, you're telling there's a difference between the sale price and the assessed price.
There's a comparative called a sales ratio.
Okay, but like the example James gave me, he only done 25% of that quad. What about these other people? Okay, it's gonna be another 4 years before they ever have the opportunity to be reassessed. They didn't get reassessed.
Well, the
Did
purpose
you
of
say
the quad, I
16
mean,
years?
if you look at the statutes, the purpose of the quad is to make sure that all property is viewed and reassessed once every 4 years within a jurisdiction. Now, that can be at the township level or the county level. So, again, if they are not complying with that statute, what you're doing at the local level is the best place to start. Unfortunately, from a legal perspective, the department doesn't have the authority to get down to the single by single, case by case
But
assessments,
what
the
you're using,
differences.
you're telling us is certified assessments when they haven't been touched in how many years?
You're-
How many,
I understand where you're coming from.
but how can
We're
you
looking
use
at
that
the-
as your calculation?
We're looking at the forest, you guys are looking at a tree.
No, we're not, because
No,
you
no.
know, you publish a book with rules, just like I gave you the example on the quad. And we're telling you that the rules aren't being followed. Your department has no teeth. You do nothing to these counties. If I came here with absolute evidence that the quads were not being done, and that's your rules, because you're the rule maker for this area, and it's not being followed, I say, what are you gonna do about it? And you just tell me, well, you gotta wait 2 or 4 years to hire a new, vote in a new township assessor. That means that your rules have no teeth. And that's the problem. No offense, I don't mean to be offensive to you, but
I understand.
8 years of my life has been dedicated. I know way more about Illinois property tax system and your rules than I wish to ever know for the rest of my
I
life.
understand.
So we go to you, we get no resolution, we go to the county, we go to the board, we go to the township assessors, we go to the supervisor assessor. This carousel's gotta stop, and we're not gonna be quiet about it. So you can whisk us away after this, but we're gonna keep making noise.
It's not my intent, and I want to do the proper research for you. Again, I've never been, in my 3 years that I've been here, I've never been in a hearing where somebody has asked me directly for a reassessment. But what I'd like to do, again, is get your contact information. I'd like to research it with my division manager. Hey, when does this actually, get enforced? When does this have to
We
happen?
got it on video, we got more than enough evidence.
Yeah, Kirk,
And believe me, I want to make sure that I research it for you. While I can't give you a direct answer right now that says yes or no if there's going to be an audit, yes or no if there's going to be a reassessment, I'm asking for you, now that you've brought it to this hearing today, I'm asking for you to let me research it and see what actually can happen for you, what can happen for you locally through the Department of Revenue's authority and direction.
That's fine, I'll give you my information, and I appreciate that.
No, I
We just, We
I
never
feel-
get any resolution. You know what I'm concerned about? There are people out there with this reassessment, because there's people that are low income in our county that can't afford to get their property taxes doubled. So do they buy the medicine for their sick parents, or do they pay their property taxes? We're in a high inflationary cycle. They should put a damn freeze on property taxes, what with all the stuff going on. This is one of the highest tax states ever.
If you look at some of the pending legislation, that idea is actually out
Well,
there.
that idea will probably float around till I'm dead.
Now, you understand, all I'm saying is, I think that's definitely part of the discussions that are happening at a bigger building down the street. I do know that there's a lot of proposed
But the
legislation.
people are suffering in the meantime. They're suffering.
Yeah,
They're suffering. If this is robbery, you know, if this is the king's men coming at the time of harvest saying, we're gonna take 70%, because last year we took 50, and next year we're gonna take 80%. When does it stop?
and
Doesn't
that-
stop.
For that, all I can tell you is, again, property tax inherently is a tax that's according to value.
That never goes away. It's the only tax you pay. You try to say it's the only one you can appeal. You put a deck, you get penalized. You fix up your neighborhood, you get penalized. What a disincentive.
I
to
agree,
fix
but
up
it's all
neighborhoods.
according to value. So if I can't afford the house and the heating bill from Ameren that comes with it, I'm gonna probably look at downsizing.
Well, when your
Understand.
when your governor passes legislation that caps the coal plants in southern Illinois here, where now our energy went up 3 times compared to what Chicago does because they're off the nuclear plant, that's not fair.
You haven't
That's
seen my
disproportionate.
Ameren bill either, have you?
I'm just saying though, this is all caused by government, not by the people, and the
I-
people get screwed all the time. I'm sorry you're getting a lecture, but
I
I'm speaking
appreciate
for
that
everyone in my
perspective.
county that can't afford this crap.
I appreciate that perspective. I don't think there's anyone here in the room that would disagree with you, okay?
But nothing gets done.
I
And the people will
understand.
suffer, and it
Let me-
continues.
Let me give you my word that I'm gonna research what I can for you
I'll hold you to it.
from today, okay?
I hold you to it.
Is there anyone that has any oversight over our supervisor of assessments? Does she speak to anyone?
County board, I mean, she's
Other than the
appointed.
county board? That's it?
That's it.
Because the county board doesn't own
It's not elected.
And she's appointed?
She's appointed in our county. Now, I understand there are counties where they're actually elected.
So I was elected 5 times as a supervisor of assessments in Menard County. I can tell you that prior to my becoming certified and qualified, I can tell you that it was appointed. I can tell you that there are ways to make that position elected. The same qualifications are there, no matter if it's an appointed position or an elected position. But I can tell you that there have been counties who have successfully taken certain department heads or county officials and moved them from an appointed status by the county board to an elected status. So I would research that, I would dive into that, and that's something that's out there through the election statutes that can help you with that. Sir, you had your hand up just a moment ago.
Yeah, I just wanted to verify, I'm the state representative for that area, and all these rascals are my constituents.
You got a rowdy
You
group
can
here,
pray,
sir.
you can pray for me.
You know what?
But anyway, but what I want to say is everything that they're telling you is the truth.
Okay,
Illinois, or Coles County is broken, it needs to be fixed, but we need your help to do it.
okay. And I appreciate that. And your name again?
Chris Miller.
Okay, Mr. Miller, I appreciate you being here with us today too, because you know, having a person like that with you today shows you that he's involved, he's engaged, he's listening, and that's why I think what it takes at the local level to have things turn around. We will work together with you on what we can do within our statutory requirements, within our statutory allowance, within our statutory limitations. Sir?
I just want to close with 2 quick things, just as info you, in regards to a potential countywide audit. We all know there's a cost involved in that. Don't let that be a determination, because they're sitting on millions of federal COVID money that can pay for this, and it's acknowledged in the video of the hearing that it could be paid for. That's one very major important element. The video will reiterate what we were talking about. The second thing, as a local government accountability organization, guys, for what it's worth, I know you're frustrated, but I've been to thousands of meetings. And I want to say thank you for the interaction, the openness, the willingness to share what you can. I understand your limitations. If 1/100th of our units of government would do what you folks have sat here and did today, we wouldn't have the problems we had, and I want to say thank you.
And I agree with you. So, thank you for saying that. It's definitely not necessary, but
I'm serious, this is how you solve problems.
we're pretty low on the totem pole around here, so, that being the case, I appreciate that, and I do agree with you. I think you're right. A lot of it actually happens at the local level, and I could sit here all day and wish that they would listen to you more, but we're gonna work together, and we're gonna see what can actually be done. I'm gonna research some things for you. So I would like to get your contact information of anybody who'd like to leave that with me. I'll get your contact information so that I can interact with you beyond this meeting, if that's okay. So, sir, one more?
Well, there's another thought, you know, what James mentioned, that the system is not being done correctly, that should automatically begin to trigger an audit from above. That should be all you need.
I completely agree with that perspective. My only thing is coming against me right now is that, again, you're not too far off of where you're required to be by statute with that 3-year median. If that 3-year median was way off the mark, we'd probably have a little bit more justification to go full steam ahead. Even though we may not be looking at that on the 3-year average, I'm going to research what can happen to help this process at least get a remedy at the local level for you guys. Okay?
Well, I would like to say also that the last time we was here, there was a woman holding this, and she wasn't as nice as you are. So, and not to degrade her necessarily.
I don't want you to ruin Joe and I's tough reputation around here, all right? We've got a reputation to
But at
hold.
least we're talking
We know we
today.
come on strong, especially me, but this is so, I'm so frustrated. I'm beyond frustrated.
You're not alone. You're not alone.
It's not
So,
personal. It's
I-
not personal. I
Hey,
promise.
this
it's not
business, man,
I don't know you, so I can't be personal. Unfortunately, you're the target.
that's perfectly fine. I've been there before and I got broad shoulders, so. Did you have anything else to add? Because I do have to officially close. Before you turn off, you haven't turned off your camera?
No.
Before you turn off your camera, I need to officially close the hearing, but I want you to keep me on camera until that gets done. Did you have anything else to add? Because I would like to take your documentation.
Yeah, I'm gonna,
Yeah, as soon as we're done with the hearing and close, I'd like to look at it so I understand specifically what I'm looking at.
Sure.
So that I don't leave here and be like, I don't know what I'm looking at. So I want you to explain it to me while you're here. You guys came up this far, I want to see what you got, okay?
I have a question before we close. Each home is, I don't know how to word this, it's evaluated, I'll say. It's either excellent, or it's good, or it's fair.
Average. I used to have an average condition in my
Oh,
office.
okay,
Okay.
whatever
Yeah,
the
different.
classes are.
Yeah.
But you as an ex-assessor supervisor, have you ever went in and changed someone's property card just because they requested it, or is that illegal to do, or is that something that can be done?
In
or
terms
should
of,
not?
in terms of the variables that make up the different aspects of an individual assessment, you know, you've got, drive down one street in your town, you've got houses that from what they call a CDU rating, condition, desirability, and utility. From a CDU rating, you've got houses are all in the same neighborhood, all in the same street. You got one that's kept in excellent condition, and it's got great curb appeal, and it's, you know, it's a home that was move-in ready for the next person. You may have homes that people maybe don't keep up as good of repair, or it's in need of some maintenance, or the age of it is showing, and maybe there's some things that, you know, detract from the curb appeal. All of those are variables. Those types of variables are what someone needs to be looking at every 4 years. Okay, locally, that's what they're charged with, is making sure that they're fair and equitable in their level of assessments, so that they're treating everyone within their jurisdiction the same. I think from my perspective, I will tell you that that's the fairness and equity of property tax, although sometimes may be lacking, that should always be the goal. And the goal is to treat everybody fairly. And if you've got these types of variables that aren't being looked at every 4 years, that's one way it can get out of whack. Okay? So if it's out of whack, you've got some of these variables that you got to have boots on the ground, and you got to have people out there, you know, locally looking at this property to make sure that it's being fair and equitably assessed.
Well, I went
That's-
back to my,
It sounds like Charlie's starting with that.
I went back to my county assessment office, and after I looked at my tax bill from 21 to 22 with the new assessment and everything, with 11% on there. And like I said, it was at $95,000 was the assessed value, which put me almost at $300,000. When I got the new letter, it was at $481. So I went back over there and I asked for a new property card. I said, could I actually have 2001's property card? And after she had told me that you can't ever change that, your house has been labeled that since it was built. And I said, oh, really? Then why was it changed from 21 to 22? All of a sudden, it went up? Was that just to provide that you needed more tax money from me? But,
Did you file an appeal this year?
oh, yeah.
Okay. Okay. No, and I would just for clarity,
No,
you know,
but
that,
I mean,
unfortunately, that's the first step. And thankfully, you can go through your board of review. If you don't find solace at the local board of review, there's a state property tax appeal board. Property tax appeal board also has teeth to where they can overrule what your local board of review came up with. And then if you're still not satisfied by the property tax appeal board, you can file an appeal in circuit court. But you have to go through all of the different levels of administrative review, is what they call it. So you have to start by talking to your township assessor, your county assessor, your board of review. You got to go up, run it up the flagpole, is the old saying. And thankfully you can do that. It's just a hassle. I agree with you, it's a
we're being dealt
hassle.
with from this supervisor of assessments. I don't know if we're being dealt with honestly
Okay.
and truthfully. And because, I mean, what happens to one person, you get to talking to someone else about it that lives in my same subdivision, and he says, well, that's funny, she changed mine so that it would lower my, and you're
Yeah.
saying yours went up? I
They
said,
need to
"Yeah."
be, they need to be consistent, and they need to have consistent responses to that too. Obviously, where it's justified, if somebody's done a renovation or a flip home or something like that, I mean, you can see how it could go from a home that's heavily deteriorated to a home that's freshly renovated. I mean, they're gonna have different variables on them. The same year of construction, the same age, but they're gonna have different variables when it comes to what the estimated fair market value might be from one extreme to the other. So,
I got something to add to that, and it's not to the multiplier, but it happened.
okay,
I called Adrian Bailey, because Adrian's the lady from the Department of Revenue for our area. The one thing that happened, we changed what we were using for a manual from the standpoint of the publication 123. I'm sure you're aware of that. Well,
that's our residential cost schedules.
right.
Yeah.
I talked to Adrian about that because the biggest problem we've got is whatever software she's using has put large amounts against things, and I'll just kind of be short with this for fixtures. In the publication 123, you're given a 5 fixtures, your roof, your foundation, your heat and cold's there, it's all combined up to 5 fixtures and a kitchen and all. And then you get a square foot price based on what it is. You know what I'm
Story,
talking
one
about.
story, yep.
Well, just one thing out of what she's using, this is really strange to me, and maybe you can explain it because she couldn't explain it to me. Those numbers that are in that book are from Marshall and Swift. That comes from a Marshall and Swift table in the 123 publication. That's what's given from the Department of Revenue to people that don't have software, but the numbers are good for the whole state. She's got fixtures figured, and it depends on where you're at in the county. We've seen them as high as $4,600 a fixture, down to $1,300 a fixture. And when I asked her why there could be that much variation between fixtures, she says, well, it depends on what the house is worth. So what I'm looking at is all combined to 5 fixtures per the square footage of what the chart tells you and a square foot price. It's all in there, and this is a 2020 publication. That's the newest one I could get.
Okay.
When you run the scale or the ladder to what she's doing, all that other stuff that I wasn't charged for now, I'm being charged for. That makes sense? So she's reevaluated what the house actually is and pull the stuff out, what I call add-ons, to the side and charge for those. So how in the world, if I've got a publication 1, 2, 3 from the Department of Revenue, which one's right?
I'll tell you, we can't force a county to use different cost schedules, but if they've got cost schedules in their local tax system, it needs to be applied consistently.
You know what Adrian said? She says they're not gonna match perfectly, but they should be nearly close. They're not nearly close.
Yeah, but they should be consistent.
But they're not.
But if
They're
they're
not.
Oh, yeah,
not,
I'm sorry.
I'm just saying.
If I said something
I'm
overly
saying to you,
simple.
this is where this big
Yeah.
batch of numbers that she's done for this last the reassessment of the quad, 25%, she's changed what's in the manual from a standpoint of what we're looking at versus what she's using. I don't know where those numbers come from. And when I challenged her about it, she says, well, I can't use that. I said, what do you mean? It's from the Department of Revenue. Why can't you use it? Why shouldn't it be, your numbers be as close to what the revenue's saying it's doing? That's your manual.
Well, whatever she's using, I mean, and there are different software packages out there, there are different cost schedules out there, like you mentioned Marshall and Swift. A county or a township's not obligated or required to use our manual. Marshall and Swift is out there. There's a cost valuation service called BEX. There's a company
I get
that's
that.
developed cost
I
tables.
get that. But $930 for additional fixtures over 5, out of the manual, the publication 1, 2, 3, and she's charging anywhere clear up to $4,600 a fixture. That can't be right.
It definitely sounds inconsistent.
Well, it
She
shows me
uses-
$2,694 per fixture on all 9 fixtures in my home. And it says in that publication, the first 5 are basically built with the home, and if you have additional, then it's going to be $930.
Definitely. some
3 times as much?
inconsistencies there. Yeah.
You might want to check into the number of times our supervisor of assessments actually took the test to be certified to do her job, because it was multiple times. 6 or 7 times, I believe, correct, Rob? Before she passed.
And I thank you for that. I don't know.
But I think the thing I'm trying to say is we gotta come close to each other with numbers, and they're not there.
You've got to have a fair and equitable system.
And I'll
has to
show
be
you,
applied.
we can show
We
you.
would
has
like
to be
to
applied
have a fair
consistent.
equitable system.
What's
that's
that?
why I was
We would
calling
like
for
that,
it.
but just,
I understand where.
That's
I
where
got one last question.
Yep.
In the event you guys, as you go through this process, you make a determination that there does need to be a countywide assessment, is that something that you folks select the assessors, or what's the process? I mean, who's doing the actual assessment? Because if you say that countywide needs to be done, obviously those who are there
aren't doing a good job.
or aren't doing it right. So how do you go about determining who would do that assessment?
There are service providers that are out there that actually specialize in county and township and local jurisdiction reassessments. That being the case, the department has a qualified list, or a list of qualifications that someone has to have clear down to the township level for them to hold office and for them to be a certified Illinois assessment official, a CIAO.
Okay.
So a lot of that not only is governed by the Department of Revenue, but it's also governed by a third-party entity here in the state of Illinois called the Illinois Property Assessment Institute. So working in conjunction with the Illinois Property Assessment Institute, the department's recommendation in the situation where a reassessment is required, the department's recommendation is that make sure that it is a qualified individual that has a CIAO.
Any idea how often that's ever happened, where the Department of Revenue said, hey, we need a countywide assessment?
I know of other counties where it has happened. Most recently, probably 3 to 4 years ago, it was another southern county that required a drastic reassessment because of the indications from the numbers. Statistically, bear with me, statistically, we're looking at these numbers with a big lens. We're looking at these numbers on averages, we're looking at the forest. So statistically, we don't see a required reassessment unless all of the statistics are pointing to a vast multitude of problems going on. I appreciate everything that you're telling me today. I get it. But dealing with it locally, taking that first step and going through the process you're going through, I know it's a headache and I know it's repetitive and I know it's a pain. But what I can tell you is legally, in order for you to gain traction and get anywhere further through the courts, that's what has to happen for each one of you that files that appeal with the local board of review. I'm going to finish and close out this hearing, and then I'm going to get contact information from you guys. But let me finish out this hearing because I want it to be as part of the record. And, okay, having conducted this hearing in accordance with Section 17-20 of the Property Tax Code and provided opportunity for public comment and submission of relevant facts, the department now concludes this hearing and will review any additional information that was presented here today to certify the tentative equalization factor to Coles County for 2022. That concludes my statutory tentative factor hearing for